Hey, thanks everybody. Welcome to today's informative Friday session, processing and working purchase order acknowledgements in FSM. My name is Molly Velasco, and I will be helping moderate the session today. Please be aware that the session is being recorded. We highly encourage you to take advantage of the time you have today with our consultants and ask questions and interact. Please use the chat feature to ask any questions throughout the presentation, and we will be sure to address them. There will also be time at the end to come off mute and ask your questions there as well. A copy of the presentation and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants. If you're not a registrant and you would like a copy, please send me an email and I will include you on that distribution. My email is molly.velasco@nordicglobal.com, and I will drop that in the chat here in just a second. So for those of you that are not familiar with us, just a little background on Nordic. So Nordic supports our customers' complex, multi-dimensional challenges and opportunities by combining deep clinical and business experience with extensive technical knowledge, providing the strategic counsel and technical guidance needed to achieve your goals by connecting people, data, and technology for a healthier world. Nordic's focus on human-centric healthcare, putting patients and providers at the center of the digital transformation journey, ensures that transformations are focused on sustainable and measurable outcomes. So for ERP, if you're thinking about moving to the cloud or going through an ERP selection process, Nordic offers unbiased ERP review and selection services. We can help you identify the benefits of moving to a multi-tenant ERP, manage the selection process, and measure the results. If you've already made the decision to move to the cloud, Nordic's prescriptive implementation process will ensure that you follow a best practice approach to get the most out of your software for the least cost in the quickest amount of time. For organizations that have already made the move to the cloud, we do recommend that every 6 months after go live, that you do an assessment performed by Nordic to make sure that you've realized the value of the implementation and you're taking advantage of the new features that are being added every other quarter. There is large CU release coming up in April, and an assessment would help you enable the features that fit your needs the best. So Nordic is there for you no matter where you are on your ERP journey. Reach out to one of our solution experts via our website, or you can also drop me an email and I will make sure that it gets to the right person. Again, I'll put my email in the chat here in 1 minute. Real quick, just have to cover a disclaimer slide that the material that we're covering today is in reference to Infor V11 or Cloud Suite. This presentation is for informational purposes only. We just want to provide you with considerations as you make the best decision for your organization. Reliance on the information presented without consultation is at your own risk. We highly recommend that you contact Nordic to discuss how solutions can be tailored specifically to your needs. With that, I will turn it over to today's presenters, Yusuf, who is a principal consultant with our supply chain team, and Nick, who is also a consultant with our supply chain team.
All right. Go over a quick agenda and then we'll do a bit of introductions. We'll start out with an overview of processing and working, purchase order acknowledgements. We'll talk about some setup involved. Then we'll discuss several fields that you can have automatically update from the acknowledgements. Then we'll go into working EDI and non-EDI acknowledgements. And then finally, we will take some time for any questions that pop up. With the agenda out of the way, I'll introduce myself. Nick Trabata, supply chain consultant with Nordic. I've been with Nordic about 3 years. Background in manufacturing and healthcare. And then fun fact about me is I learned to juggle on a cruise ship. So that's pretty neat, and I'll let Yusuf introduce himself now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. My name is Yusuf, and I have been with Nordic for about 3.5 years now, and I've been in the Lawson /Infor world for about 25 or 26 years. I'm just going to say that my favorite time to spend right now is I just got my new 1962 Fender Strat, so I'm spending most of my time with that, but I'm not working, of course. So with that, we're going to go into the overview of the PO acknowledgements, and Nick is going to speak to that.
Yep. So why should you process and work purchase order acknowledgements in the first place? There's a couple key reasons. First, we want to ensure that our vendors actually received our orders and they're acknowledging them, making sure that they accept it. There's no changes that we need. It allows us to correct any cost variances in a timely manner before we get to the invoicing piece, and then we get that pesky little buyer invoice message that has to be answered before the invoice can match and pay, which will also allow us to reduce invoice discrepancies. Finally, it allows other users in the organization to be able to see an updated purchase order status. Instead of it just being released or issued, they'll be able to see acknowledged, accepted on those purchase orders. Acknowledgements can be received in a couple ways. You can get it via email, fax, or phone. EDI 855 purchase order acknowledgements is our favorite. And then finally, supplier portal, if you have that implemented, suppliers can go in and acknowledge messages as well. If you get an acknowledgement via email, fax, or phone, these will be manually entered into FSM and will display in FSM. This is functionality that needs to be turned on in your purchasing company to allow manual acknowledgements. EDI 855 acknowledgements, these are sent via EDI from your vendor and they process through and they'll display on the purchase order. And finally, supplier portal. Suppliers can enter in acknowledgement information directly into the supplier portal, and these will then display into FSM. It's important to verify that all of your issued purchase orders have been confirmed by the vendor, and the purchase order gets updated to reflect any of the acknowledgement messages or required changes to ensure everything flows through.
Thank you, Nick. I'll now talk a bit about setting up the purchase order acknowledgements. Of course, the users must have an account in FSM, and they must be associated with these main roles in order to process the purchase order acknowledgements. And today we're basically going to be looking at this from the buyer's point of view. So the buyer role will be the main role to discuss. And to allow manual acknowledgements, these are non-EDI transactions. So you must check the box that says allow manual acknowledgement on the purchasing company's main tab. These are just basic setups, by the way. There are additional setups as you start implementing in more detail. And to utilize the EDI 855, the purchase order acknowledgement, the most basic setup that is required is to identify your carrier, either GHX or Vizient or others. And of course, define your trading partners. These are the vendors that you're doing business with. and of course, populating the data substitution tables. And these are just the differences between what you call a parameter versus what the vendor calls it. To allow the supplier portal, to allow the vendors to access supplier portal to enter their acknowledgements, these two fields must be checked in FSM. Again, these are in the main tab of the purchasing company. Now, Nick will talk about auto updates that the acknowledgements provide in the system.
There's a couple key fields that you can have automatically update based off of the acknowledgement message you receive back. One of them is delivery tolerance days. If a vendor's early delivery date compared to the PO delivery date is within the tolerance, the 855 transaction will automatically update the early delivery date on the purchase order. If that delivery date is outside of the tolerance, it will keep the early delivery date how it originally was, and then it will update the late delivery date on the purchase order record. So this way you can see when do we actually expect to receive the goods from the vendor. This is a setting that you can enable in the main tab of the purchasing company. Another one is to allow the vendor item to be updated from the PO acknowledgement. This is a checkbox on the purchasing vendor or purchase from location built in the purchasing vendor. And this will allow it to be updated if the item is a special type item, or if it is in the item master and there is a vendor item record already in the system. We see this a lot with different kits for certain suppliers. Sometimes they do slight variations, and so it's great to be able to update the vendor item based off of the acknowledgement to ensure that the receipt and the invoice process smoothly. One other one, you can override the vendor determined cost in the options tab of the purchasing vendor or purchase from location with update PO from receipt or acknowledgement. This feature is not available if you have the cost required option selected for the purchase order line. And then finally, the fourth one is if you are utilizing GTINs, you can have those GTIN numbers get updated automatically based off of the purchase order acknowledgement from the vendor. These are pretty useful fields. Like we mentioned, it helps you reduce invoice discrepancies down the line, ensure things are flowing smoothly, and make sure everything on the purchase order is updated correctly.
All right. So before we go into working these acknowledgements in the system, are there any questions that you have so far? Might have.
I have not seen any in the chat so far.
Okay.
Don't be shy if you have questions, though.
Spencer was here. I know he would have questions, but I guess he's not.
I don't have any questions yet.
Okay. All right, so let's
has his
continue.
hand up.
Oh,
Sure, I can ask a question.
yes.
A few slides back when you were talking about the acknowledgement, being able to update the vendor item number, I presume that's just on the PO itself. And one more slide back, I believe.
Yes.
So if it's updating it on the PO itself, there's still the vendor item record in the system that has to be manually changed. Is that correct? It doesn't
Correct.
change the vendor item, only the
Yes.
PO line.
That's just on that PO line. You would still
Okay.
need to go into your vendor item record and make sure that gets updated.
Right. Okay, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Anyone else? All right. So now let's talk about working these acknowledgements in FSM. So to get records into the system, into Infor FSM. So the first step is to start the acknowledgement IPA flow. So this flow will connect to the carrier to pick up the files stored in their carrier inbound directory. They will then be added to the EDI data exchange with this process status of new. So that's the first step. Now we're at the point where we're trying to get the transactions into Infor so we can monitor them and view the results. And then the second step is to run the translate inbound program. This will not only bring in the acknowledgements, but it is also used to bring in invoices and receipts as well. So since we're focusing on the acknowledgements, these are the types. When this program runs, it will update the purchase order statuses with these following 15 or 16 different types of statuses. Not that you will see all of them, but the main ones are, of course, no detail or change, with detail and change, detail, no change. I've never seen this one, no acknowledgement needed. So that's a very rare one, I guess. You may get some rejected ones, but not that often, hopefully. And of course, the supplier portal one, this one just indicates that the acknowledgement was entered by a vendor using the supplier portal. And then we have the manual as well. So next, the buyer now monitors the purchase order acknowledgements. So the role is a buyer, and the link that they will click on is the purchase order acknowledgements. Once they click that, they will get into the application that's called purchase order acknowledgements. And this form has these tabs here that the buyer can access and view and decide what needs to be resolved. So on this slide, again, I put up the tabs up here. That's on the form, and let's review what each one means. So when the inbounds programs run, they create the messages under messages needing action tab. This includes all the EDI, supplier portal, and the manually entered acknowledgements will be under here. Revisions are with the purchase orders that already have revisions on them. Acknowledgement messages, you just review the messages here. My acknowledgements is if you worked it and it's per buyer. So you will only see yours, but under acknowledgement messages, you should be able to see everybody's in case somebody's out of office. You'll be able to go in here under this tab and resolve the issues. This tab here, awaiting acknowledgements, are only for manually entered acknowledgements. They do not include EDI nor supplier portal type acknowledgements. This one is used, acknowledgements to manage. It's just another way of searching for the acknowledgements for specific ones or filtering by buyer or any other criteria. Removed acknowledgement messages. This tab will have all the removed acknowledgements from the first tab, messages needing action. Here, the buyer will take action as to either to remove it or take an action of communicating with the supplier if it's the supplier generated acknowledgement. Any questions on this? Okay. All right, so to work the non-EDI and non-SPI portal purchase order acknowledgements with no changes to the purchase order, we click on the awaiting acknowledgements. And here you can search by either buyer, date, vendor, PO number, delivery date. And at this point, if you decide to acknowledge it manually, you can by clicking on the PO number or highlighting that line, the PO line that you want to acknowledge, and click on the Acknowledge Manually link. So once you start a manual acknowledgement, you'll have one of two acknowledgement types to process. If it's accepted, no further action is necessary at this point. And these are just some of the steps that's needed to process the accepted type acknowledgement. And finally, after you submit this acknowledgement, you must click the Finish Acknowledgements option to finalize it. And also, you're probably aware that only one manual acknowledgement can be created for each purchase order. Now, the second acknowledgement type is accepted with detailed changes, right? So the buyer will go in and read the messages as to what kind of a change is required. They will work the change by modifying the PO and then submit it. And of course, like the other one, the least one change will be expected. At least one change will be expected with this type of action on the acknowledgement. Again, this one just emphasizes clicking on the Finish Acknowledgement. When you are doing manual acknowledgements, you must take this step. So with these acknowledgements, the system automatically sends an email to the buyer. And this figure here is just an example of an email that the buyer will get so that they can take action. On the EDI 855, when that program runs, and there is a field there that says send email to buyer. If that is checked, at that point, the buyers will also receive an email notification that they have acknowledgements to respond to. That will be from the EDI transaction.
Yusuf, Melissa has her hand up with a question.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, I was just wondering on that previous slide in the email, the link where they click here to view acknowledgement details,
Yes.
Does that just take them into the FSM screen, or does it show them the acknowledgement detail in like a PDF or some kind of readable format?
It will take you inside the FSM
Okay, that's what I
to
thought.
view.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. Okay. All right. The ways to take action for manually acknowledging purchase orders. When you are in the purchase order acknowledgement application, you can simply click on the purchase order number or highlight the line that you want to acknowledge, and then the menu will open up, and you can simply just select acknowledge manually from that same application. And finally, you can also process manual acknowledgement on the purchase order application itself. So when you go into manage purchase orders, you'll see that there is an issues and acknowledgements tab that you can utilize. And sorry. Down below are some of the just a few examples of for this example, some of the messages that the acknowledgements create. So there's a whole slew of them. So if anyone's interested, we can certainly send out these types of messages, various types of messages that you can look at and see which ones are important and which ones are not. So if it's not important, such as system can update the delivery date, that one you can remove from the acknowledgement screens. But the ones that have a cost message or a quantity message or a vendor item message, these you must work and satisfy the PO so that down the road we don't have issues with receiving and also invoice matching. Okay. That is the high level presentation, and we're thanking you for joining us. So if you have any questions, now is the time.
Looks like Melissa had her hand up for another question, and then
Yeah,
Okay,
hi.
sure.
Me again. So on the messages needing action tab, where that includes the EDI and manual acknowledgement messages,
Yep.
there's a lot of different kinds of messages that we get in there that we don't always necessarily care about or need to work, like description, I think is one of them that we wouldn't really ever need to know or we wouldn't want the vendor's description to be.
Right.
You know, it just gets really busy in that screen, I think. Is there something we can do to make that screen easier to work and sort out?
Unfortunately not, Melissa. That's why the buyers, if they go in and filter by their own buyer codes, it'll be a lot less to manage. But messages like the one that you just described about an item's description, they can simply remove it. Ideally, at the end of the day, that tab should not have any messages left. But that's the ideal, suggested scenario. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, I wish you can control the types of error messages, or not error messages, but acknowledgement messages that the system will allow to present. But
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
then we also have Ryan with his hand up.
Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, Melissa, I would also say to that was kind of part of one of my questions as well, is if this team here with Nordic had advice on message numbers. But Melissa, I guess I would say or recommend, if that's what you're looking to do, I know some organizations I've talked to will have like an admin every morning come in. And if you are just on the purchase order acknowledgement screen, under that messages needing action tab, all the way to the right is the message number. And you could create, I don't know if this has, I'll look, yeah, you can even create a saved search with that description one, for example, right? Same, we don't care about that. So that happens to be message number 46. If there's another one, if you just separate all of the numbers by semicolons in that one field, you could filter for all of the ones you don't care about and delete them all at once.
I think that's a field personalization, maybe the number. I'm not seeing it on my screen.
Check. I didn't.
But that's
think
a cool. That's a cool way to sort them out by the description type.
Yeah, you're correct. I do have message number probably personalized, but it is that simple. If you it is called message number. So there's an ID code on that, and then you can filter by the message number type and delete them all. I guess that's my only recommendation, but I was hoping to learn maybe from this group if there was, a proactive way to go about not
filtering them
even
beforehand.
getting certain message numbers to even come to the screen, rather than us manually having to remove them. But is it my understanding, Yusuf, there is nothing proactive? We have to be reactive to all of those message numbers.
You know what, Ryan? Yes, that is correct. I mean, we're not aware of any of that, but that is a great point to investigate. And I will take that on and communicate with Infor to see what they recommend or what they suggest we do. But yeah, but that's a great concern. It's an important concern. I just don't have the answer, and I mean, we're not aware of it unless Nick, you've come across that.
No, I'm not currently aware of any ways
so
to be proactive about it, because I mean it's based off of what the vendor is sending back to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which I get, but yeah, to Melissa's point, and I think any customer would say this almost. Every situation is different, but there are several message numbers that, I think almost everyone says we don't care about it. So yeah, it would be great to have a proactive option of just not even having those come into the queue. But I get, we can just delete them en masse. It's just then someone is deleting them en masse daily.
Absolutely.
The other question I had was, what is the benefit, I guess, of utilizing, aside from, well, it just lives in the system, if you're using this purchase order acknowledgements in the system versus we have staff today who use our van through Vizient, and they're just going out there to see the cost messages, exceptions, unit of measure exceptions. They don't get the descriptions ones there, so that's probably a good thing because they don't care about that. But essentially, is there a great benefit of pulling it all into Cloud Suite versus leveraging what your van is offering?
No, that's a good point. So like you said, in the van, especially at Vizient or GHX, yes, they do provide that automatically through the EDI. The manual ones are the ones that you receive through emails or phones.
Sure.
Where the vendor calls you. You can potentially just go into the system and update the PL accordingly, and then release it again. But entering an acknowledgement will be like an audit trail as to why something was changed. That would be my guess. That would be my take on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our staff today do like comments and whatnot. They aren't manually acknowledging yet, but they'll put a comment with a confirmation. But to your point, a manual acknowledgement, right, you can only have one, and then that's it, you said. So I could see them still having to utilize comments anyway, but
Sure.
Just trying to weigh the benefits so that I can have a more educated conversation with the teams.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we have one takeaway that we're going to find, or we're going to research. Are there any other questions?
Casey brought up that there are in the buyer setup screen, there are acknowledgement filters. There's not a filter for item description though. But there are cost message, rejected item, quantity, delivery date, UOM is different. If there's a substitute or the vendor item is different, there are those filters available. But so far, none for description, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, Casey. So
Sounds like that might be all the questions we've got. So I'll jump in with just a few things to wrap up. So if you find that you have further questions down the road, please keep our Coffee with Consultants offering in mind. So this just allows you 30 minutes of complimentary time with one of our consultants to get your questions answered or even solve a pain point. You can go to our website and sign up for that. Or as always, you can send me an email and I can get you in touch with the right person. So our February series is wrapping up on the 28th, so no session next Friday. So our last session will be on the 28th, so please register and join us. We'll be talking about data archiving with our digital health team. You can also always send me an email and I can help get you registered for that. And then after our February series, we will have our next quarterly series in May. So look for topics and information regarding that towards the end of April. And then finally, our team will be attending iMug in April, as well as Infor Connect in May. So please look for us there and be sure to stop by and chat with us. Thank you guys again for spending time with us. Thank you, Yusuf, and thank you, Nick, for a great session. And before we wrap up, looks like maybe another.
I promise it's not a serious question.
Oh, okay. Yusuf, Spencer
Yes.
wants to know, do you still have the Yugo? You kept promising to drive cross country to visit.
Yes, Spencer, I had to rebuild it again. And I made it as far as Dakota, but I have to return. So I'm going to try
Maybe
again
next
this
year.
summer. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited. I can't wait.
Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you, Spencer, for ending on a giggle for all of us.
I think that's all I do.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you,
rest of your
everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.